We expect we can always find a way out of this, but that's not going to be the case if these actually happen. Hi, I'm Bryan Walsh. I'm the author of End Times, A Brief Guide to the End of the World. I'm here at TicToc to talk about all things global catastrophic threats, diseases, pandemics, biotechnology, volcanoes, asteroids, pretty much anything you can possibly have, including nuclear war. When it comes to supervolcanoes, the good news is that we are very, 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 very unlikely to see it happen in our lifetime. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. There are about 20 supervolcanoes around the world. There are a few actually near population. There's one in Italy, there's one in Japan. Indonesia, of course, has a bunch. That's been one of the most volcanically active regions in the rest of the world. And then, of course, there's the one I think people are most concerned about here in the United States, and that's Yellowstone, actually. Volcanic ash is extremely toxic. It's toxic to breathe, it's toxic to animals, it's toxic to plants. As that spreads globally, that's when you begin to see that volcanic winter effect, where you're looking at temperatures falling, 10 degrees Fahrenheit, 15, maybe more, and the result is, that stays for a number of years. You can't really farm in that kind of temperature. It's almost like imagine like New York suddenly has, Anchorage's weather. We only have in the world about 2 months of reserves of food. So if we lose the ability to farm, lose the ability to create more food, it will not take long before we're running out. So nuclear war is something we've experienced.
Drop whatever you're doing. Find the nearest hole and make like a mole.
There was a time in the 50s and 60s where they were being tested almost 2 to 3 times a week around the world by the different countries that had them. How it would happen, there are really a few ways. Potentially someone could, a world leader could make the decision to launch one. It sounds insane, and indeed it would be. There are about 9 countries that have access to nuclear weapons now, but the ones that you're most worried about are really still the United States and Russia, and that's simply because they have the most. Obviously, the North Koreans decide to launch a nuclear missile. That could be incredibly dangerous, but it doesn't have that same global effect where you have so much fire, soot put into the atmosphere that, again, you have global dimming, you have global cooling, and of course then you have global starvation that follows. The good news about nuclear weapons is it's not actually that easy to develop one. It still really requires the resources and expertise and effort of a state to carry that program out, and it's very hard to do it secretly. Disease is incredibly dangerous, obviously. It's killed more human beings than any other natural disaster, than have died in war. They're constantly emerging out of nature, often jumping from animals to human beings. In fact, it's actually increased in speed as we've penetrated further into environments like rainforests. However, they're kind of limited as an existential threat because evolution puts sort of speed barriers around naturally occurring diseases. They can only become so virulent or only so contagious. A bioengineered virus may not be under the same speed limits, essentially. One example I use in End Times is a fictional case, but it's taken by experts, where you have bioterrorists essentially they take the virus of a common cold, and then they put in the virulence genes of something called Nipah, which is a real virus that spreads in Southeast Asia that is extremely virulent, not very contagious. The result is you get, for lack of a better term, a super virus. This is becoming a reality. This is, barely science fiction at this point. As you see advances in technologies like synthetic biology, in CRISPR, and gene editing, it's going to be easier and easier to do this kind of work. I actually feel better than I did before I began writing the book. That's in part because understanding these risks, I think, helps you sort of put them in perspective. So you're not just attacked by inchoate fears about what's going to happen or the sense the world's spinning out of control, which I think a lot of people have. More importantly, though, it put me in touch with the people who are working very hard to make sure this never happens. And the fact that I know that there are astronomers focusing on asteroids, that there are volcanologists focusing on volcanoes, that there are people out there in biotech and AI who are really concerned about these risks and trying to make sure that they never really happen, that makes me feel better.